Welcome to the Walking Out Your Purpose podcast with your host, always doing the most. It's Alicia Smith, back with you all again for an amazing episode. If you are watching this on YouTube, you'll get to see her beautiful face, but I have a guest today, and I'm so honored, privileged, excited to hear more about her story, and certainly want to hear about her services that she offers. And we are, you all, oh my goodness, almost at the end of another year. How grateful, how thankful we are to God for just his abundant blessings. We know that it's not always a good season for people as they're going through loss or going through other things. But, another chance that we have to even open our mouth to say good morning, to say thank you, to say hallelujah, praise God is a blessing. So we don't take it lightly. And so today we're going to chit chat. I'm so excited to have another guest on the show, you all. It's been a while. So I know y'all are like, where are the guests, Alicia? So we're going to do a peek into purpose with our guest today, Miss Joyce Johnson. And I'm so excited for you all to hear from her. Woman of God, woman of faith. And you're going to hear about what she does in a second. So welcome to the show, Joyce. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I am doing wonderful on this Sunday afternoon.
Awesome. We are blessed by the best, as I like to say. So let's just start. Like, tell us who you are and what you're all about.
Wow. Uh, Purpose. This is about purpose. And it's about calling because we all have a calling on our life. Um, I am now a mental health professional. But I started in corporate America. I was in corporate America for 25 years. And 2014, I, I was just feeling uneasy and was able, because of my job, to take a month off to just kind of just put that to the side and just really focus on what is my next move because my kids were getting older. They were going to be going to college and doing their own thing. I didn't want to have, like some parents do, a problem letting go. And so I know that, you don't, when you're a Christian, you don't ever retire. And so I felt like God was calling me to something else, but I didn't really know what it was. And so in 2014, my mom died unexpectedly. And that was like the tail end of my month off. And so after that, it was like, wow, just because I was raised by a single parent. And my mom, our relationship wasn't that good, but she was my mom. But there was just a lot of tension there and things like that. So when she died, I actually felt free because, to be honest with you, I've been a Christian since 2006. So I came to Gray Road in 2006, got baptized in November of 2006, and so that's when I really feel like I started my spiritual journey. I was raised in a Baptist church, but I didn't even understand how to think about God, except for, God's going to get you for that. God's going to get you for this. But when I started coming to Gray Road, I felt like I was starting to hear the truth. And so that really for me is the biggest thing. What's the truth? Because in my family life, there were so many secrets and so many lies, and people weren't telling the truth. And I was just hungering for truth. And so when my mom died, again, that still didn't stop that thing that I had inside of me to say, what is your next move? I could have stayed in corporate and been fine and waited it out till I was 55 and then decided what I was going to do. But I felt like my spirit was slowly dying. And I'm like, this cannot be the place for me. And so I started to ask my sisters. At that time we had a couple of small groups where we were studying different books and stuff. And I just asked my sisters to start praying for me that God would show me the direction that He wanted me to go. Now, 10 years prior, not 10 years prior to that. No, 10 years prior to 2014, 10 years. Uh, I started to go to seek therapy because I knew something wasn't right. I knew it. Now, at that time, I believed in God, but I didn't have God in my life like he is now. And so I understood how much going to a therapist helped me. And so because there's not a whole lot of therapists that look like me, that's kind of what I felt I needed to do. And so, I my prayer still to this day is like, Lord, if this is meant for me, I'm going to take the steps and you're going to open the door. Okay. And if you don't open the door, that means it's not for me. It may not be for me right now. Even if I got to take little baby steps, I'm going to move in that direction and we're going to see what happens. And so when I left my corporate job, I walked away from 6 figures a year. I calculated and it was a lot of money and benefits. And, some people, I had a sister at my church told me, don't, you better not leave that good job. But I couldn't listen to that. I had other people in my life. I have a church mother. She's 86, and I talk to her every day. And she teaches me stuff that I wasn't taught by my own mother. And she's very encouraging. So I left that job and I started 6 months later in my master's program. I went online because that just fit my schedule. My kids were older teens, and so they didn't really need me as much as they, did when they were little. But I still had to keep my eye on them, and so I did that. And I it took me about 2.5 years to get my master's, and I was just, but it was so. I'm not saying it was easy, but it felt right. And so and I had graduated college in 1990, and going back in 2016, it's like, I don't even know what this is like. Blackboard, what's that? And so how do you turn in assignments and all of that? So I started with one class, loved it. Then I said, okay, now you're going full time. And so I just went full time and I was just cranking. Um, and so then I knew I didn't want to work for anybody anymore. So I'm like, Lord, if this is what you want me to do, and I kid you not, my church mother said, why don't you talk to a sister in our congregation? She's a doctor and she has a building. And my church mother said, why don't you talk to her, see if she has office space? I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to mix it with church and this and this and that. Then my other church mother said, Joyce, I think she said, Joyce, did you talk to such and such? I said, okay, God. And we were at a conference. Actually, I think we were in Detroit. We were at the Midwest Ladies Conference in Detroit. And I called our doctor, our sister who's a doctor. I called her from that conference. And I said, listen, this thing came to me twice in 2 different directions. Do you have a space to rent? She's like, yeah. I said, well, can I come see it? She's like, yeah, you can come see it Monday, which was that Monday after that weekend. And then I had a space. And I'm like, see there? And so it was all about me being that face for mental health in my community. And the counseling background that I have is from a Christian school because I wanted to get the Christian perspective on counseling. And I am a firm believer that the spirituality, and in my case, it's God. Everybody don't believe that, but I know, and I talk biblical principles in my counseling sessions, even though people may not know it's biblical principle. I ain't got to quote the Bible, but that's a biblical principle. And it's like we all got purpose, right? And we know Jeremiah 29:11 tells us, I know the plans I have for you, okay? And so we got purpose. So what's your purpose? And the name of my business is True Calling. And again, it's about, when I was at that corporate job, my first degree is in engineering. So I was at that corporate job. I was good in math. I was good in science. Okay, I could do the job. Yeah. But that's not why I'm here. Okay, what is my calling? Okay. And so that is why I felt compelled to do this. And I knew that I just knew this is where God wanted me to be. And I and then when the pandemic came, I started my business in 2018. And the pandemic came in end of 2019, beginning of 2020. And it's so many people that have been reaching out just to connect. And even though my schedule is full, I still help refer them to other African American therapists in the area. So even though I may not be able to see them, sometimes that's the only call they'll make, is that first call. And I don't want that to be their last. Okay. And so it's, I love my church and I love the spiritual growth that I've gotten there. And so people say, well, you just need to pray. Yeah, I pray, but if God send me some other truth, the truth can come from any place. Okay. And God, like my church mother said, if God used a donkey, he could use anything. And so that's the case. And so my mind is open. But at the end of the day, it's about what can I help people with to move them in the direction that God has for them.
Oh, y'all, that was so juicy. I hope that you all heard all the gems that she just dropped, and the fact that everything that she just testified to are the principles that we've been talking about over the last year and a half. You have to start, right? As God is giving you the unction, as he's giving you that nudge, as he's giving you a vision, it's so important that we take the baby step, right? She took the time off of work to reflect, to think about the future. And a circumstance happened in between that time that could have completely deterred her. And to go back to what was comfortable. But she stepped out of that discomfort, right? To move forward. I love it. I love it so much. All right. So many gems, but I want you to talk about, how do you stay intentional in your purpose?
Whew. I think just because of the nature of what I do, and it's the Bible when it tells us, I think it's John 4:24, about worshiping God in spirit and truth. I feel like my business is of God. And so, when I walk in my office in the morning and I look around and I say, this is God, this is God. And, but there's various things that I do. I mean, I'm a big proponent of putting words around me. So I have words in my office that says truth and peace, hope, believe, all these things that I can see and my clients can see every time you walk in my office. And just the name of my business, True Calling. This is a calling. That's what this is. This is a calling. And I feel like I can't help but be intentional because of what I do every day.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my goodness, so good. And I was just thinking about it too, right? Intentionality, even in, to your point of what you've called your business, intentionality in making that phone call, intentionality for asking and being bold and courageous. The Bible tells us, don't be afraid, but be bold and courageous, right? So good, so good. I love it. Okay. So tell us about an obstacle, right? So, tell us about what's been challenging. I mean, you started your business in a pandemic. Oh my goodness, which for you and the type of business that you have, right, has probably been somewhat positive because people have needed help, right? But tell us about maybe a challenge that you've encountered and how have you overcome that to
Well,
keep moving forward?
and to be honest, challenge when you're used to getting paid once a month for 25 years and that check stop, and you be like, Lord, these bills got to get paid. And you call me to do this. so even though the money might not have been in there then, like it was before. It was always there to get the bills paid. And so financially, I would say for me, because I was so used to it coming in on a regular basis. And so this really has had to say, okay, Lord, but you gave me that other job that paid X amount of money. You tell us that you can give us more than we can even imagine. So guess what? That's what I'm expecting. But right now the bill's getting paid.
We want that cup running over, Lord,
Exactly.
so we can bless
Exactly.
others. Yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely. Absolutely. But like you said, God has sustained you, and what a, oh my goodness, what a testimony that is, that when we trust God, when we are truly in his purpose, because the Bible tells us we could plan all day, we can do all of these things, but it's about his purpose that will prevail. And so when we are in alignment with him,
and it may not look like other
yeah,
people think it's going to look, and people may not
exactly.
know. And it's like I wasn't hearing God's voice in my head saying do. It wasn't that. It was what I just, and me and my church mother talk about this all the time. It's like when God is calling me to do stuff, it keep coming up and I ain't got no peace. And sometimes I'll be like, Lord, I don't want to do that. And he bring it back.
Talk
And
about it. Yeah.
this ain't about you. And so that's one of my first minister at Great Road was Richard Rose. And that's what he used to say. It ain't about you, ain't never been about you, never will be about you. And I'd be like, wow. So this ain't about me.
Yeah.
This is about, and I do tell my clients, God brought you to me for a reason. And as I begin to hear their stories, and a lot of the stories are about trauma and abuse and making bad decisions, and then people just get in a certain state of mind. But then I raise my hand and say, sweetie, I've been there. Okay? You ain't by yourself. Okay? And a lot of times people don't think, they think you ain't never been through nothing. Oh, yes, I have. Trust and believe. But that's another thing. I'm very open on my website about some of my story, because a lot of this stuff is about the secrecy, and that will kill you. Just keeping these secrets and not reaching out and learning and understanding and then moving through it. And so that's one of the reasons why Psalms 23, the verse in Psalms 23, it says, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. You can't run. You gotta walk. And we want to run. You can't go over it. You can't go around it. You gotta go through it. And you gotta walk. Because there's a lesson. And sometimes that's hard to learn.
Oh, that's so good. That's so rich. And again, I think back to just who God is, the character of God, and all the stories that we read about in the Bible. Sometimes we have to really take a step back and understand that the written word is real, and people have gone through real situations and real trials and tribulations, yet we somehow believe that we are exempt. Or that we're not going to go through anything, but the purpose of us going through is so we can get into our calling. The
Right.
purpose of, it doesn't sound good to say, okay, my mother and I didn't have a good relationship, or it doesn't sound good to say, I grew up with whatever abandonment issues, or I grew up with, not enough, or what have you. But all of those things have happened so that we could be prepared, so that we can help the next person. So for
And that,
those that are listening, I really want you to catch that I know it's hard, whatever you might have gone through or currently going through, but just realize that all things work together for good for those that are called according to his purpose, right? And that he's going to allow you to overcome that so that you can help the next person, because we're here as vessels. We literally are vessels to be used by God. That is our soul. When God created us in his image, it was to worship him. It was to glorify him. So we have to get back to the basics. Of course, we want to be, we want to do great exploits, and we want to do all of these things. But at the end of the day, God wants our worship. He wants our time. He wants glory.
Mhm.
And so we have to be in position and in alignment to do that. And thank you so much. Or you're shedding light on how important it is, um, to reflect and to think back and to understand, you know what, I have gone through things, but it's gonna bless someone.
And that's why Jeremiah or Genesis 50:20, what you intended for harm, God meant for good. But the last part of that says for the saving of many lives. Okay. And sometimes people don't say that. And so that's kind of what I feel like I'm doing. I am part of people's journey. Okay. And so it's like I can look at all my stuff and say, okay, I'm still working through some of that, but I'm still able to help people. And that's what I tell my clients. I'm still on my road. I'm still on my journey. I go to therapy too. I got a therapist. I said, but I'm ahead of you. Okay. So because I'm ahead of you in your journey, then I can help you just like you're ahead of somebody else. So don't think just like with church, I got to have it all together. No,
Jesus went ahead down the cross, honey. We we don't have it together.
exactly. And that's not even possible.
Yeah, yeah.
And so we just have to be honest. You got to find somebody to be honest with. And now we're supposed to be honest with God and go lay everything at his feet. But one of my things my church mother said, he's like, we are God with skin. We are his hands and feet. We are his eyes. We are his ears. We got to pay attention. And then when he presents us with something, then we make the choice. If I see somebody in need or hear somebody in my congregation in need, I'm going to reach out and help them. Okay. Just like if somebody comes to my office, I don't stand on the corner with a sign saying, please come to my office. But when God brings me, it's so many commonalities with so many of my clients and my story. And I say, I know why God brought you here.
And you're so right too, Joyce, just about how, um, God has always used man. You
Mm-hmm,
know, he's always, and when I say man, of course, we're talking about, both,
mm-hmm,
all
mm-hmm,
genders.
mm-hmm,
But one thing that, I love about the word is that he tells us how can they hear, right, unless someone is sent, and he also tells us that we have um, to do the work that he's asked us to do, because that's how people will experience him, right? And I forget the book that it's in, but the Bible talks about, us making sure that we're feeding the poor, that we're helping the sick, and helping those in prison. And somebody was like, well, when did we do that, Lord? When you did it to the least of them, you've done it for me, right? So it's so important that we do that. All of you watching this on YouTube, my son just brought me his cup. Like, I want juice. All right. So I want to talk, I want to hear from you just a little bit. You've talked about it some, but how Jesus and therapy, like, it's okay. Help someone break through that reality that it's okay.
mm-hmm. And again, this goes back to truth. God is a God of truth and love and order. And so sometimes the way that I think about it is when we come into this world, most of us are like a blank slate. And then we have our mothers, our grandmothers, our fathers, our people in our family who influence us. And sometimes they don't lead us in the right direction because they're teaching us what they know, which may not be of God. Okay. And so thinking of, again, seeking the truth, we can stay in that space where it is about, well, this is what Big Mama taught me, or this is what my mama taught me, or my mama said. But what did God say? Because at the end of the day, and again, I do a lot of reading. I do a lot of reading and just trying to get these what I'll call nuggets, okay, to fill in the pieces of the puzzle. Because I do think that there's some things we can understand while we're on this earth, and there's some things we can't. Like I may never truly understand why I had to experience sexual abuse as a child. But because I have experienced that, I was able to keep my kids safe and not repeat some of the behaviors that I saw repeated in my family. And then I'm able to be help validate other people's feelings and thoughts about having that same experience. And so it's about seeking the truth. And sometimes one of the things I ask my clients is I say, because people are hesitant about therapy. And I said, do you think you know everything? So I'll ask my client that. And they'll say, no. I say, do you think I know things that may be able to help you? And they say, yeah. I say, that's all therapy is. That's all it is. Okay. Now, I'm not saying some people don't have mental illness, because some people do. We all have mental health, just like we all have physical health. Okay. Everybody don't have diabetes. Everybody don't have high cholesterol. See, now she calling me. I got her this minute. So I just tell them, I said, you don't know everything. There's things that you say, I know, that may be able to help you. That's all therapy is. And so mental health, we all have mental health. The question is, where is your mental health? Is it balanced? Because sometimes we overextend ourselves in other areas. We get anxious, we worry. And the Bible tells us, don't worry. And so sometimes we gotta, I mesh the two. What does God say? Because this is not about, I'm going to tell people things that I see as I observe, and you tell me your story. And then I'm going to make suggestions. At the end of the day, it's the other person's choice as to whether or not they do anything. Just like God gives us free choice. But then we have to deal with the consequences of the choices that we make.
That's good. That's good. I hope you all heard that. And I really do hope that someone was freed of their thoughts about therapy. It's okay. And again, God has used man for so many ages. I mean, think about people in the Bible who were doctors. God is able to heal with a word immediately. The woman's blood stopped, right, from her touching the hem of his garment. So God is an immediate God, but God is also a God of order and process. And, Luke was a physician. Come on, somebody, right? So God has given people gifts, right, and abilities that are different than maybe yours are, and they can help you in that area. And I love how you said we all need some support and help, and that we're all just at a different place on the journey, so you can help people that are that are, I don't want to use the word necessarily behind you, but those that are still on their journey.
Right, correct.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that. So Sister Joyce, I want you to tell people where they can go to get support. I know that you have your own website, so please share that. And I love how on your site you have Black Girls with Therapy, I think it's called. So maybe you can just share a little bit about those platforms.
Yeah, there's so many different resources out there for people to go to find a therapist. Therapy for Black girls is one. There's other therapy that may not be specifically geared toward African American, but you can, and that's what I tell people, specifically ask for us, because that's going to help people know. I've had insurance companies tell me, well, we really don't, segregate by race. But most of my clients tell me, you ain't Black, I ain't coming to see you. Okay, because we already know that's that already hurdle of race that we've had to deal with in this country. No, they not gonna go tell their stuff to no white person. Now, I've had white therapists, I've had man therapists, I've had female therapists. And so that doesn't really bother me, but it does bother a lot of people. And so Psychology Today is another site that you can go to, but you have to do the search correctly. So if you Google Psychology Today, African American therapist, and put your zip code in there, do it on a Google search, not in Psychology Today, then it'll bring up therapists who are of color, or Black people, or African American, that's near your zip code. Okay. And so people need to start understanding that. Okay. So for me, I do have a website, and some of my story is on there, and you can go on there and look for other resources where you can potentially find therapists as well, because there are some also that work on a sliding fee scale. But my website is www.true calling, C as in Charlie, C as in Charlie, S as in Sam.com. You can reach me at bewell@truecallingccs.com. That's BEWELL at true, TRUE, calling, CALLINGCCS.com. And I would be, and if you reach out to me and you need help finding a therapist, let me know that. Put your zip code in there, and then I can do the search for you. But I also want people to be able to do it on their own. So if you're not technically savvy, please, by all means, send me an email and I'll look at it and send it back to you. That's the best way to get a hold of me.
Amazing. Amazing. I want to first say congrats for just all that you're doing, really for God. Certainly it's
It's
for,
a ministry.
yeah, it really is. And thank you for being obedient. Thank you for saying yes to him. And this is just a true testament to the audience of when we say yes, just how much God will bless us. And it's not always about the monetary. It really is about your calling. It really is about what God has just positioned you to do, because you find fulfillment, you find joy, you find impact
Yeah, for sure.
in what you're doing. So thank you for sharing your story. We love to hear stories on the Walking Out Your Purpose podcast, because I think that it just gives people that extra encouragement. And I like to have different stories, because again, everybody's on a different journey. It may be somebody that's out there that's thinking about doing what you're doing, being a mental health advocate, being a counselor. There may be someone that's struggling and needs the services. So we want to
Correct.
be as many things as we can to people on this show. And so thank you. I really do appreciate your
Welcome. Thank
time.
you. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm always happy to talk about mental health.
Awesome. Awesome. I love it. All right. So thank you all so much for tuning in again to another episode of Walking Out Your Purpose podcast. As always, I pray that you're blessed, and I pray that you start walking. Thank you so much.
Amen. Amen.